love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out.
Hello, Miami. Thank you so much for watching 305 Sports Now. I am your host, Will, and I am here to give you a recap of what was week 1 of the Miami Dolphins game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it was as ugly as you can't even fathom. It was just one of the most ugliest games that I've seen in a very long time, but I mean, it is to be expected. It is week 1, and they don't get as many reps anymore in preseason, especially with one less game that they used to. So you saw a lot of sloppiness on both sides of the ball. I will say the defense did hold its own for a good part of the game, with the exception of a few big plays given up here and there, at least in the first half, to Trevor Lawrence or ATN and so on. But as far as the collective of the game goes, I thought defense did hold its own, especially in the last portions of the game. What was really concerning to me was the offense. I mean, it really was. I was kind of taken aback by Mike McDaniel's play calling, and also the offensive line play. But before I get to that, I also want to go over the stats a little bit. So I'm going to share my screen right now and just go over a bit of what the game it entails. And it was quite an interesting encounter. As I show you the box score of the game, you can see that Tua Tagovailoa had 23 receptions, 23 catches for 37 attempts, 338 yards passing. He got sacked 3 times for a 19-yard loss. His quarterback rating was at 101, and most of those yards came basically to big passes and long plays and chunk plays. One that led to a touchdown by Tyreek Hill, all right, and also to Jalen Waddle as well. Let's look, before I get into the running game stats, let's go into the receiving stats, which I think is the most important combination. Now, after, I have to hand it to Tyreek Hill. He went through one hell of an early afternoon before game time when he was arrested, or at least handcuffed, by Miami-Dade police. And so I won't get into that without all the full facts being taken out. But he was handcuffed, and it was kind of an interesting circumstance for it being just a routine traffic stop. We'll see what happens, and when everything's unpacked, once the Metro Police Department conducts its investigation, and let's see how things turn out. But Tyreek Hill was targeted 12 times in the game. Balled out, man. Balled out. 7 catches, 130 yards, 18 yards per reception, an 80-yard bomb from Tua Tagovailoa. And Jalen Waddle was right behind him with 5 receptions, 109 yards, and a 63-yard reception for Jalen Waddle on 5 targets. So it was a pretty solid game, a great game for Tyreek. He picked up right where he left off last season, early going, and so did Jalen Waddle. Jonnu Smith, who was the acquisition to be the next George Kittle to some extent, 1 catch for 7 yards. And Durham Smythe had 3 targets in the game, no receptions. I would say he had a couple drops in the game, to say the least. But the bottom line is, what I wanted to get into was the running game numbers. The running game numbers were not, the run was not very good. It was 25 carries for 81 yards and averaging 3.2 yards per carry. The Jacksonville Jaguars were much better. Dolphins got to clean that up a bit, as Etienne had 12 carries for 44 yards, but Tank Bigsby mauled the Dolphins a bit, averaging 6 yards per carry. He was obviously the strongest runner for Jacksonville, as Travis Etienne had a couple hiccups running the football within the fumble, and also getting stopped on with 1 yard to go, to be exact. Okay, so we have, to me, the best runner was Jeff Wilson for the Fins at 5 carries, 26 yards, averaging over 5 yards a carry. I like to see him used more in the offense. He is your power back, your featured power back, and I think that's a good thing for the Fins. But the defense really stepped up. I thought Jalen Ramsey made some timely plays, despite the pass interference call. Jalen Ramsey was pretty good. All right, he had 3 tackles in the game as well, and he had 1 great tackle to stop the Jaguars that I mentioned earlier on 4th and 1. David Long Jr., 8 total tackles, 7 of them were solo in the game, and Jordan Poyer had his debut with 4 solo tackles, 6 in total as well. Emmanuel Ogbah had a huge sack in the game, and so did Calais Campbell, the former Cane, who also was with Tyreek at the time and was handcuffed as well. And so he was able to shake it off and have a good performance. Okay, 3 tackles, 1 sack, 2 TFLs. Okay, as well. And then you have, of course, You had Jalen Phillips coming back from that horrific Achilles injury, suffered last season ending injury. He had one sack and a timely sack that pretty much ended the game and sealed any hopes of Jacksonville attempting to make a comeback. 20-17, a very ugly game. I will say this though. Jacksonville is not as bad as people make them out to be. Yeah, they struggled last season. They started out pretty good, like the Dolphins. They stumbled towards the end. But I do think Trevor Lawrence is a pretty good quarterback. He has some more talent this year at the receiver position, okay, with Gabe Davis coming in there as well. And I do like Etienne as a running back. We saw what he could do with Bigsby as well in the game. So it's not like they opened up against the Chargers like the last year, which had a very poor defense. Last year's defensive ends had almost about 30 sacks in between them. So they could get at the quarterback, and he did, sacking 2 or 3 times. So I'm not going to say it was all Miami being awful. I have to give the Jaguars credit. They are a better football team than Miami faced last year in week 1. Nonetheless, Miami does get the victory off a field goal by Jason Sanders that won him the football game. Great clutch kicking by Jason Sanders. I think he's like 8 for 8 now as far as game-winning field goals. So he's pretty clutch when you need him to be. So that's a good thing for the Fins as well, since he did miss one early on in the game. I think from 42 yards out, he totally shanked it, but he was able to nail it when it counted, and that's a good thing for the Fins. Okay, now into the game as well. I thought the offensive line was horrid. I mean, horrid. Again, made me miss Robert Hunt and made me miss Connor Williams quite a bit. But I will say this, though. I do have to say, without the repetitions and live game action that they would get, at least from the first couple of preseason games, the Dolphins, and well, not the first couple, maybe the last couple preseason games, the way it used to be, and usually in the 4th preseason game, you'll get about 3 or 4 drives that you can kind of get your offense, have a little bit of continuity before the season starts. Now you get 3, and you get the week off before the actual season starts. I do think we saw a bit of rust from the Dolphins. The play calling by Mike McDaniel was very suspect, throwing to the boundaries quite a bit. I'm starting to talk about the sides quite a bit, not running up the middle like they should have. Raheem Mostert didn't run with great power. That's why I think they use Achane a lot more, and also Jeff Wilson when it counted. The Dolphins, again, the play calling, the Jaguars were coming at them. They were going from side to side in those kind of situations. I hope they don't mind me saying this. I discussed with Flo and John off air yesterday. Flo was like, they should just call draw plays, especially if you have an aggressive defense like Jacksonville. I was saying they should have thrown a few more slants, get the ball out of Tua's hands a lot quicker, and make Jacksonville be a bit more honest. They made some good adjustments in the end of the 3rd quarter, beginning of the 4th quarter, as the offensive line protection did get better, and Tua was able to make some timely throws, especially that big bomb over to Tyreek Hill. But I will say this, though. The Miami Dolphins don't come out victorious if Javon Holland doesn't come in there and make a solid defensive play and stripping Travis Etienne over at the 1-yard line, and the Dolphins are able to recover, making it a touchback, and which led to the big throw from Tua to Tyreek that I believe was the turning point of that game. Then, of course, you have some clutch sacks by Agba, Calais Campbell, and, of course, Jalen Phillips getting in there and wreaking havoc and taking down Trevor Lawrence in the game and making it difficult for the Jaguars to make a comeback. The team flipped. While Jacksonville looked like they were moving the ball a bit more and the Dolphins were stagnant on offense, it flipped later on where Jacksonville couldn't do anything. Nice adjustments by new DC Anthony Weaver, and the Dolphins were able to move the ball more on offense with the play calling of Mike McDaniel. I do expect things to get better. And in week 2, it's a short week. Miami's playing a very, very, very familiar foe at the Rock again, in the Buffalo Bills. So we'll see what happens in that game. It's always a tough matchup. I would rather face Buffalo on a Sunday at 1 p.m., but the league loves their marquee matchups, and one better of a marquee matchup than Miami versus Buffalo prime time on Thursday night. So we'll see what happens there, okay, as well. But let's hope that the offensive line issues are a bit shored up, because that it was considered a bit of a weak point for the Dolphins heading into the season. How will the line play? You're solid with Teron Armstead, Robert Hunt, Kendall Langford. I can have experience, but I mean, our O-line is not a world beater, okay? They don't scare people. We're built mostly on the outside and speed. We're not built to be mash and powerful in the trenches. That has got to change, because when you get to the playoffs and you get more into division play in your conference, usually being more physical than your opponent gets you victories, because you're able to grind and grind and grind and grind them into being fatigued. Okay, so that's where I'm at. So I do hope the Dolphins could try to be at least a bit more physical as the season progresses, because speed can only get you so far. Because in the playoffs, defenses tend to get better, tend to get tighter, and physicality does play a key role. The Kansas City Chiefs are a good football team, but they can be physical with you. The Ravens could be physical with you as well. The 49ers could be physical with you as well. These are teams that are built to win in the playoffs. Okay, and I hope the Dolphins, they can become that team as the season progresses. But we'll see. I'll give you my take on Buffalo this upcoming Friday. I'll try to get you guys a show this upcoming Friday. All right, ladies and gents. Guys, that's it for me. If you like what you heard, please do not forget to hit that like button, subscribe button, and share button. For 305 Sports Now, I am Will. Stay safe. God bless you soon. Heads up, guys. Bye-bye.